Help Save Our World Speak, number 54, Science and Physics. The human psyche has been hijacked and infected with the thought plague. Hello and welcome to our 54th Help Save Our World Speak online speakers meeting, where we are changing the conversation to change our world. I'm Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth, change, and transformation. These meetings are designed to help save our world by empowering you to heal yourself so that you can empower others to heal themselves. So together we can create a happy, healthy, and sustainable future for all life on planet Earth. How we see ourselves, our world, and our place within it is fundamental to our existence. Our human psyche has been hijacked. So we really don't know who we are and what our meaning and purpose of life and everything is. So it's really important to look at the essence of our reality to find out what it is. Hopefully at the end of this, when we see the universe and everything within it as one incredible composition of one living, changing being, happening, and all interconnected and interrelated as one complex three-dimensional medium of life, all happening, moving and changing, and everything is happening as compositions of patterns and symphonies of a greater symphony of movement and vibrations and changes, nothing separate, all expressions of the whole within the universe. Then you'll begin to understand who and what you are and what your place is in the universe. The next group of ideas are really important to hold in your mind so we can draw conclusions later. According to Einstein's theory of special relativity, published in 1905, nothing can exceed the speed of light. That light speed, Einstein explained, is a fundamental constant of nature. It appears the same to all observers anywhere in space. Now, the reason I see that as being so is I would say that it is because electromagnetic space itself, although vibrating very fast, is not moving forwards at the speed of light. Only the effects of the connected sequential vibrations is what we see as the speed of light. Although the universe itself is just vibrating sequentially. The same theory says that an object gains mass as it speeds up towards light speed, and that speeding up requires more and more energy to achieve. And the more the mass, the more the energy is required to speed it up. By the time an object reaches the speed of light, Einstein calculated, its mass would be infinite, and so would the amount of energy acquired to increase its speed. Thus, to go beyond the infinite is impossible. That's some degree taken from physics.org. This brings home to us that everything is made of light, or the electromagnetic vibrations energy of space, which vibrates at the speed of light outwards from its source or sources. Einstein's most famous equation from his theory of special relativity is E equals mc squared. This equation means energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. It shows that energy E and mass m are interchangeable. They are different forms of the same thing. Here's an example. If you could turn every one of the atoms in a paperclip into pure energy, leaving no mass whatsoever, The paperclip would yield 18 kilotons of TNT. That's roughly the size of the atomic bomb that destroyed Hiroshima in 1945. On Earth, however, there is no practical way to convert a paperclip or any other object entirely to energy. That would require temperatures and pressures greater than those at the core of the sun. This comes from pbs.org. At one stage, we were led to believe that space is a total vacuum, which is true when it comes to the lack of air in most of space. But this does not make space nothing but propertyless or empty. In fact, we're composed of space and its unseen properties. There are also many different frequencies of vibrations of space that vibrate throughout space without friction in all different directions. That's why we can see the planets, the sun, and the stars. We can see the light and feel the heat. We can even detect many different frequencies of vibrations energy, Venergy, I call it, beyond the light spectrum with special equipment. They are also vibrating outwards from many different sources, outwards into space, and are intercepted by our reality and our world as we're flying through space. I'll show that later. Then there's the effect called action at a distance, quantum entanglement, or Einstein's spooky action at a distance, which is not limited by the speed of light and happens without time. This is observed in things like gravity between bodies in Newtonian physics, or the relationship between two quantum entangled particles that are separated in space, maintaining their relationship and properties like position, momentum, spin, and polarity. What is space? What is it composed of, and what are the properties that it has? The idea that space was composed of a material ether was disproved. Then it was shown to have electromagnetic properties because electromagnetic waves of light and many other frequencies of vibrations readily passed through it. Space began to be spoken of as the electromagnetic field of space. Einstein also spoke of the three dimensions of space and the fourth dimension of time, calling it space-time. I will speak about time later. Einstein's idea of warping of the fabric of space-time, physical bodies affecting space and space affecting physical bodies, is his attempt to explain gravity. The ideas of space being an electromagnetically connected field or ocean of space is heading towards more logical ideas. To me, a field or a fabric has two dimensions. I prefer to think of it as an electromagnetic ocean or medium of three-dimensional space, because nothing in nature is perfectly two-dimensional or fits on a Cartesian plane as used to create explanations and mathematical calculations in physics. The organization and the messiness of nature is all around us. Incredibly precise in some instances, but imperfect, and not absolutely mathematically perfect either. The illusion that mathematics is the language of the universe is nonsense. The next thing is the subatomic realm, is known now to be mainly composed of space and vibrations labeled as electrons that are spinning at energy levels at the speed of light. This confirms that everything is composed of vibrations, as Einstein said, with vibrations energy of space within space. Let's look at the obvious observations that make common sense to the average human that prove what I am saying is true. The sun shines and the plants grow. We eat the plants, leaves, fruits, vegetables, roots, and we grow. Without sunlight, there is no life, no growth. We are composed of vibrations and energy of the sun and many other celestial bodies, combined with that vibrations energy of water and the vibrations energy of air and and earth nutrients and so on. Have you ever sat watching the logs burn on a campfire? Seeing the logs turn into heat and light of flames and glowing coals, the heat and light energy being released from the logs of trees that the trees had collected throughout their lifetime. Have you noticed how the oceans heat up and warm, and the rising air currents and trade winds combine with a spinning earth to form tropical storms, hurricanes, and tornadoes, only happening during the hotter times of the year? Huge waves of energy combine with all forms of heat and light energy held in the water, rising to form such powerful forces of nature. From calm winds and flat oceans, a hurricane manifests as and huge swells are generated just with the added energy from space. Have you realized yet that you don't see objects? You see the vibrations energy that left the object, electromagnetic changing wave energy radiating outwards in all directions, transmitting patterns of information in the form of radiant three-dimensional waves, radiating outwards from the object that you receive with your eyes, your retina, which sends electrical signals into your brain, where you recognize the patterns of energy and neurological chemicals flow and through your neurological connections of your synapses, and you associate them with learned patterns. You associate with words you have learned, which are patterns of energy that you say as vibrating air patterns, which is received by others' vibrating eardrums and are transmitted to their brain via mechanical and electrical signals and chemicals, and they recognize and respond to that information. All of which is just compositions and patterns of energy. We live in a magical world and universe. We just don't know it. To solve many of the problems scientists face, they have to be willing to go beyond their own imposed limitations. Like Einstein made risky moves using thought experiments to go beyond the known, in the hope they would be proven to be true later, and many have, to some extent, proven to be so. Others were proven to be wrong, as in his universal gravitational constant, which he apologized for later. Then his choice of photons in his photoelectric effect instead of waves, which we are still going to have to recover from now, using our own brains and logic. One possible solution to this is that the sciences have the ability, of course, that is only if there's a desire to do so, dropping theories that don't work and replacing them with others, which is supposed to be one of their fundamental premises, which is not always applied. However, the dominant religious, mathematical, and scientific and other stalwarts within the controlling institutions will not let that happen, in fear of losing their credibility and their power. Even the individual physicists and especially physicists with PhDs in physics, having spent their whole lives and learned the language and the way of thinking and specialized and got their doctorates, they are not likely to change what they think and throw away a lifetime of study. They will hang on to what they've done to earn a living. They'll keep on pushing the biases, lies, and deceit even further, no matter what the cost to life on planet Earth. Unfortunately for them, the truth will out. They cannot hold back the truth, or they will eventually be washed away with the flow of the truth. For example, when science disintegrated reality down to the subatomic realm, they realized that the objective materialistic theories of Newtonian physics, broke down. There was an alternative wave theory explanation for the nature of reality. This was to a large extent ignored and marginalized for the sake of the more materialistic and religious bias. Power and control are always chosen first over truth and reason, and that has to end, or it will be our end. Knowing there are many problems with the modern enforced objective materialistic scientific system of reasoning and the effects it's having on our world, wouldn't it be wise to change it and do it fast? The only other possibility is to create a new replacement belief system that is based on our current understanding of the truth, which will only be adapted and changed when it's necessary to keep up with newly uncovered truths. I'm not saying that great strides have not been made by the sciences over the chosen belief and ignorance of certain religions, mind control systems, and belief systems. There is still a great need to be logical and use reasonable logic to discern the truth about nature and the world. The one constant is, if you are willing to go to that extent and find it, the fundamental, universal, and natural wisdom of life and nature and the universe is constant. It's not changing. It's unchanging. And Einstein found it, Newton found it, and we just have to be willing to go there and accept it and live by it. Objective reasoning instead of subjective understanding. Materialism, reductionism, objectification, materials, resources, measure, units, quantification, number, degrees, time, fragmentation, frames of reference, naming, classification, specialization, disintegration. We all should know that the whole is complex patterns of motions, symphonies of vibrations and flows. As humans, we naturally see the patterns in everything. This could be instinct or early childhood training to recognize the lion in the long grass or the snake in the bushes, or recognize the species of trees by their leaves and fruits by their shapes and colors. We are taught to see the distinct differences between edible, nutritious fruits and vegetables and inedible or poisonous plants. No two edible fruits are exactly identical, nor are they at exactly the same stage of development and ripening. We learn a form of generalization based on our experiences when tasting the fruit. This purple color Suriname cherry is really sweet just before it goes off and then becomes inedible. From orange to red, they go from not nice to tart or sour, getting sweeter until dark purple, while changing and becoming more plump and inviting. However, the moment we make a mathematical judgment and call it one unit, one cherry, the magic of what it is lost. Continents, islands, rocks, boulders, stones, pebbles, sand, powder are grading names based on similar pieces of rock. In the dynamic nature of our world, These are changing processes combined with the heating and the cooling and expansion and contraction of those rocks and the receiving and emitting of light and other frequencies that make it possible for us to see them. Then their combinations form sedimentary rock and return to becoming part of the layers of the continent under pressure. Then the growth and the changes of the planet's surface through different cycles of ice ages, then ultimately returning to magma and eruptions as volcanoes molten lava, flowing, emitting heat and light, and then hardening into new igneous rock. All stages of changes of something that we consider to be permanent. Observing the melting, flowing, and combining of metals to form bigger quantities of similar substances under extreme temperatures and pressures, the purification of metals and rocks in molten states, impurities gravitating down as sedimentation. An example would be glass. Glass is composed of molten rock, and yet it flows over hundreds of years like a liquid. We can see this in the different thicknesses of stained glass windows in very old cathedrals and churches. The glass is ultimately a flowing liquid, so it thins near the top and bulges thicker at the bottom. What we think of as absolute things, they are not. But because of the balances of nature, we think of our world as stable and permanent, when it is fundamentally not. Only the balances, the Goldilocks zone of our planet's planetary movement around the sun, the balances maintained by glaciation, the cycles of the moon and other planets, and the cycles of the tides and the currents, then the most important balances of life and the cycles of life, all combine to sustain those balances, which give the impression of permanence. However, it is only those relationships and balances that make this reality possible. If you think of the molten state of pre-geological time, when this planet was molten, then the formations of rocks and the crust of the earth, and then the tectonic plate movements, creating the continents and the fold mountains, and then the depths of the ocean canyons and the thin Earth's crust under the ocean floor as opposed to the thick continental crust. Then the earthquake and tsunamis. Then think of the Great Rift Valley and many other formations and movements of rock. Then you think of the volcanic eruptions. Rocks turning so hot, they flow like boiling liquid and emit light and heat. Then harden into rock again when it cools, because of the balances of our environment absorbing its excess energy and some radiating out into space, re-establishing the balances that make rock possible. Then you think of the heat of Mercury and Venus that are much closer to the sun, and the cold of Mars, which is further away from the sun than Earth. Our stability and livability on Mother Earth is composed of critical balancing acts, and we have lost our understanding of who and what we are in this reality because of our thought control systems. Life is about balance. Without the balances of nature, we do not exist. We are composed of the vibrations, heat, and energy, and all of the different vibrational frequencies of energy of space that formed and still is forming mass. We are now the vibrations energy of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the galaxies, and the universe, which we intercept and capture and grow with and within. Our spinning gravitational vortex planet flying through space. We live on a living planet that is living and growing through its relative motions through space. Revisiting mathematics. Think of spirals of galaxies, hurricanes, tornadoes spiraling plant life leaves and flowers and shells on the beach, all special and unique, and when living or happening at a faster rate, are magical and unique. Although there is a definitely recognizable pattern to them, every one of them is unique. No two are identical, nor do they occupy the same space or have the same subatomic energy, even though they look similar. It is easy, so easy to generalize these processes from three-dimensional to two-dimensional sequences and calculate a mathematical sequence to describe them, as in the Fibonacci sequence, the series of numbers. Although this might be useful in calculations, however, using it, we lose the uniqueness and the true nature of those processes and changes. What it really is: three-dimensional changing, growing, living, flowing. Number. Observe any two leaves on a tree. No two leaves are the same. No snowflakes are the same. No two trees are the same. And they are constantly changing at different stages of growth, happening, absorbing light, sequestering carbon, releasing oxygen, sucking water from the ground, feeding siblings, and connecting and sharing water and nutrients throughout their roots and communicating through the mycelium. They are living conscious beings, as we are, as is all life. I will speak more of this later. Some places we can observe large planetary changes happening before our eyes. However, many changes are easier to see with time-lapse photography. Just because we cannot see the changes happening with our limited perception, lack of patience, short lifespan, and of course limited senses, and limited knowledge, wisdom, and mental capacity, does not mean it's not happening. Observing the changes in the sand with waves lapping on a beach, we can see the changes. Then the tidal changes make huge changes as tides wash in and wash out, making actual waves in the bottom of the ocean, in the sand on the bottom of the ocean. Observing the smallest changes is less discernible, although the results of those changes can be catastrophic. Engineers on railway lines soon learned and realized that lengths of steel needed regular expansion joints or risk buckling the railway lines and crashing trains. The lengths of steel expand and contract between the heat of midsummer's day and the cold of a freezing winter, and every day and every night. And without expansion joints, that would not be possible. Cement roads and bridges are separated into blocks with expansion joints for the same reason. If they are not separated, they will begin to break up with the expansion pressures, and the bridges would begin to bend and buckle and collapse. You see, change is constantly happening with the absorption and radiation of heat and light into our natural changing world. Snorkeling and diving in the ocean, we feel the changes in water temperature as we dive down in the layers. As we get down deeper and deeper, it gets colder and colder. We also experience the loss of colors as we dive down, different frequencies of light being absorbed at different depths. At a certain depth, when you get beyond all of that light absorption, nothing has any color. Of course, you can change this by having some artificial light source like a torch or a lighting system to light up the reef and see the colors. As we know from light experiments, light passing through a prism of glass rock, glass is rock, is refracted and split into different frequencies of light or colors. This is where we observe the light spectrum, The color or frequencies of vibrations that make up white light, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. This is light passing through rock. We know that our visual perception of electromagnetic vibrations of space is far more than we can see with our eyes. Many higher and lower frequencies vibrating more or less often and traveling at the speed of light. The more the frequency, the more concentrated the energy, the greater the impact of those vibrations. Some electromagnetic vibrations have been measured at great depths under the earth, having passed through very, very dense rock. Specialization without perspective. Mathematicians, well, one in particular that I know of, goes on and on about fractals. Repetitive, similar patterns do happen in different sizes from large to very small as you go down in levels of decreasing size. But that does not make the extremes of the mathematical infinite view true. When we enter the subatomic realm, the fractals cease to exist, and they do not exist as the nature of the whole universe. They are anomalies of patterns, and there are patterns all around us, like any other patterns and flows of our reality. It is so easy to get lost in the details as one becomes more and more specialized and loses one's perspective of the greater whole. It is also easy to be lost in fear, having realized that you've spent your whole life getting a doctorate in the field only to realize what is wrong with it and to remain silent out of self-preservation. Nothing will change unless you are willing to step up, speak up, and change it. Why do you think young physicists are so inventive and older physicists not? It is not because the younger physicists are better prepared. It is because the older physicists are too scared or comfortable where they are and don't want to rock the boat. The younger physicist has nothing to lose, so he's willing to put himself out there. We lost our understanding of everything and our relationship or connectivity of everything. When we see the universe and everything within it as one incredible composition of one living, changing being, and all interconnected and interrelated as one complex three-dimensional canvas medium of life happening, moving, changing, and everything that is happening as compositions and symphonies of that greater symphony of movement, vibrations, and changes, nothing separate at all, expressions of the whole within the universe, then you begin to understand who and what you are and your place within it all. What if we actually do live in a three-dimensional, conscious, connected, living, vibrating, flowing, organic, living world and universe, which is expanding, living, and growing? Love is the creative force of the universe. Creation and growth of life is a result of energy, gravity, and magnetically combining vortices, moving in close proximity together, forming relationships while giving and receiving energy. That is what creates and sustains life, as well as planetary systems and galaxies. They are all complex ecosystems, living relationship systems. It is not just a matter of chance, but a matter of fundamental consciousness, needs, desires, and expression. Life striving for life. There's a natural wisdom of the creative and destructive universe on which everything is created, lives, and changes state to return to the balances. Life is based on the fundamental principles of the nature of our connected vibrating wave and cyclical universe. The principles are connectivity, movement, events, vibrations, waves, change, cause and effect, relationships, giving and receiving, proximity, combining to form reality and life. Combined cycles form helical spiraling motions we call atoms. Cycles upon cycles combined to form reality, growing more and more complex relationships in movements, waves, vibrations, cycles, all winding and moving together to form everything, creating great symphonies of vibrations we call the physical expressions of the universe within it. Vibrations combine with vibrations, waves upon waves, cycles upon cycles, form everything, all having immense amounts of energy, all flowing together in synchronicity, love, balance, and harmony. Nature is not perfect. Balancing is not perfect. Constantly falling in and out of balance, only trying to come back into balance like a vibrating wave, always trying to achieve equilibrium. Cells trying to achieve homeostasis. Harmony is the movement together in some semblance of unity, togetherness, and flow. Love is the principle behind it all. It is the creative force of the universe, the feminine creative nurturer. Live and let live. Plant the seeds, nurture the babies, and grow new life. Killing, destroying, and plundering is the opposite of that. This must not be taken out of context as an excuse to perpetuate the centralized societal warring, plundering, pyramid schemes paradigm. Natural balances are achieved when, in all abundant systems, growth and predation are in a perfect balancing act with one another. Plants grow, herbivores eat, nourish the earth and future plants, and move on to ensure future abundance. The predators only take enough to ensure that there is not overgrazing, and the grazers move on. Eating too much, game becomes rare. So if the predators eat too much, the game becomes rare and the predators die off. So there's this constant balancing act between the two, not as we have in our world now, where the predators are taking everything and killing all of nature just for their own selfish gains. Now, this stood out to me when I was doing my research reading this time around. Finally, I cannot resist the following quote from Sir Isaac Newton. This was under Galileo Physics, Virginia. Are not gross bodies and light convertible into one another? And may not bodies receive much of their activity from the particles of light which enter into their composition? The changing bodies into light and light into bodies is very comfortable to the course of nature, which seems delighted with transmutations. Okay, so let me just read on here. It says, of course, despite all of this insight, we must not get carried away. Newton didn't believe in the kinetic theory of gases. He thought the atoms in a gas were more or less static. The pressure rising from mutual repulsion between neighboring atoms. He also believed light was made up of particles, not waves. Although I don't like that last section where he says, although in retrospect, maybe he wasn't maybe so wrong. I don't agree with that because this is a reference to this guy believing that particle physics is true. But anyway, so that's just fascinating that even Newton, the absolute facts man, realized that light created matter and matter created light. Now, I'm going to go and open this third and final thing. Hey, how's it going? Did you hear anything, or would you like to say anything?
I just came on a couple of minutes ago and just heard you wrap up the other part about Newton and the physics there, and heard a little bit about the universal energy of love. So I don't have a lot to to repeat, but that's a lot of information right there as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've got basically one thing that I prepared in slides, and I would just like to share that, which is fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Sure. I'll be here. I'm watching.
Okay, so I'm just going to share now. Okay, this is E equals mc squared, and it's that concept of the interchangeability between maths and energy. Yeah, they have energy, and in this particular case, they have energy in joules, the mass in kilograms, and the speed of light, which is that number there. It's quite incredible. It's 299,792,458 meters per second. Can you like even comprehend that? It's just crazy fast. Sorry, let me just have a drink of water. And at the bottom, it has the speed of light squared, and I'm not even going to try and say that number, all right? But it's just crazy amount of speed, all right, meters per second. And of course, you can change these numbers to either into kilometers or into miles and whatever, and reduce the actual number of digits that you would have to quote. But here's something really, really interesting, just to give you some idea of the mass, of the energy. If you could turn every one of the atoms in a paperclip into pure energy, leaving no mass whatsoever, the paperclip would yield 18 kilotons of TNT. That's roughly the size of the bomb, the atomic bomb, that destroyed Hiroshima in 1945. On Earth, however, it's not practical. There is no practical way to convert a paperclip or any other object entirely into energy. It would require temperatures and pressures greater than those at the core of the sun. I took this quote from, I think, Nova. So it just gives you some idea of the incredible amount of energy that atoms actually possess. So you, me, and the rest of reality, atoms, this was the closest I could get to my impression of an atom. It's just light waves spinning, all right? So I chose that one. And atoms together, we scientifically call substances like, hydrogen, sugar, whatever, just different substances. And then those substances in human cells combined look like that. And you can see it's an ecosystem. It's not just, one cell doing its thing on its own. It's a relationship. And this atom is a relationship. And here we have, and of course, these would be relationships with relationships, but here we have our organs. And of course, these are all, finely tuned relationships, all working together, composed of all those things. Then, of course, here we have a fish on a reef and the whole ecosystem. It's very, very complex relationships all functioning together. And then, of course, here we have a jungle. And I love this monkey vines or Tarzan vines. And all of this is ecosystems, it's relationships. And then, of course, we have our beautiful blue planet out um, in space. Everything is composed of connectivity, vibrations, cycles, motion and change, proximity, relationships, and the giving and receiving of energy, gravity, love, balances, and harmony. Change is the one thing you can count on. Everything's changing. Everything you do or don't do today results in your tomorrow. Change requires responsible effort. And that was brought home to me the other day when a friend of mine said, "Oh, I've got land. Um, um, do you want to come and turn it into something? Um, but you have to change what you're doing from writing and speaking and teaching and come and dig ditches." So um, it's interesting. I'm giving a lot of thought. Our rotating world. Now, it's really interesting that everything is cycles upon cycles upon cycles. Earth's circumference is 24,901 miles at the equator. If we went all the way around just at the equator, that's what it would be. Earth's speed of rotation is about 1,037 miles per hour on its surface at the equator. So it's spinning pretty fast. But that's the concept of relativity. Relative to the Earth, we are not going anywhere. We're pretty much standing still. So um, that's where the idea of relativity comes from. Okay, our elliptical orbiting world. Now, cycles upon cycles upon cycles, the same concept again. Here we are spinning in an elliptical orbit around the sun. The distance from the Earth to the sun is about, of course, it decreases when we're in the middle of the orbit and it increases when we're at the extremes of the orbit. But on average, it's about 92,955,807 miles, according to the International Astronomers Union. Earth's orbit is 584 million miles per year. Now, that's a huge distance. Can you even comprehend that? It's a long way. Now, Earth travels around the sun at approximately 66,627 miles an hour around the sun, which is really, really fast. I just got this image of the sun and the planets just to show you, that we have all of these different things in orbit. So Mercury is close to the sun, Venus close to the sun, then us in this Goldilocks zone, and we have a moon that's orbiting us, and then of course Mars, which is a lot colder than us, quite a bit further out. Then we have an asteroid belt in Ceres. We see as a star, but it's actually part of this asteroid belt, or it might be considered a planet in our days because things change. So then Jupiter's orbit, it's like one of the gas giants, and he has Saturn, same thing. How physical things are is a relationship between the amount of energy they have, and of course, if they get too close, then they become hotter and hotter. So they won't be the same as this perfectly hard, more solid planet that we live on. But these are less physical. It's actually really interesting. Then Uranus and Neptune, and then Pluto out here, and it's got its moons, and Makey, I don't know what this is, like one that I'm not familiar with. And then of course the belt of objects out here, and Eris. These are pretty much found in recent years. Not Pluto, but these out here. So next one. Now, if you think of all of our motions and you combine them together as a solar system orbiting the sun, all of the planets are orbiting the sun as it flies through space. So it's a fascinating concept that here we have our cycles upon cycles upon cycles, and the sun doing its own cycles. So let's just go on to, and moving, cycles. You can see the cycles, playing themselves out. Then the Milky Way galaxy, the sun orbits the galaxy at about 448,000 miles per hour. So here it is going around the galaxy. The sun is about 25,000 light years from the center of the galaxy, and the Milky Way is at least 100 light years across from one side to the other. According to Stanford University, we are thought to be halfway out from its center. So halfway out, this is where they plotted it. The sun and solar system appear to be moving at an average rate of 448,000 miles per hour. At this speed, it will take 230 million years to travel once around the Milky Way galaxy. All right, so once around. Now, the thing is as we know from hurricanes and so on, this spinning is happening. The whole thing's turning. So how long will this spin as a galactic system? It's just really interesting. The speed of light, of course, is 186,282 miles per second, or 670,616,629 miles per hour. So 1 light year equals, 5878625370000 miles. That's a huge amount of distance that light travels in 1 light year. And the next one. The Milky Way galaxy is rotating with its huge spiraling arms, okay? It is flying through space at about 1.3 million miles per hour. So it's rotating at that speed around, and at the same time, it's flying through space. And at the same time, we are orbiting the galaxy. So think about that. Combine all of those spiraling, orbiting movements, cycles upon cycles, cycles upon cycles. The nature of reality is a symphony of cycles, vibrations of space, all flowing and moving together through space. It's symphonies of existence and life. It's symphonies of existence and life creating motions. Everything is like this magical symphony of motions and cycles and changes and seasons. And it's like all of the ancients who lived closer to the land didn't believe in linear time. It's only us that believe in the construct of linear time. I think we've lost the plot. Everything is cyclical and cycles upon cycles, and creating patterns and flows. And so, yeah, that's an interesting concept too, is if you took the whole galaxy with all of the solar orbits and all of those cycles, and you had to like plot all of those motions, you'd have this incredible combined symphony of flight through the galaxy. An ecosystem, love, relationships. Anyway, so that was what I prepared for today. And we're on the hour. So what do you think?
I think physics and science and and love and cosmology and philosophy all get to combine at some point and give us the answer. And I think we're still so much in the collection stage of data, whether that's just a human thing or it happens around the universe regularly. And as you know, sometimes the data overwhelms us to the point where we just stop paying attention and go about our day even without questioning what it is that we're doing. And I think a lot of us are in that situation now. I speak for humanity. But just that, how do we make sense of any of this? And there are people in life that go about researching and experiencing as much as they can in order to do that, and people that take a little bit of the data and like the five blind men and the elephant, make a determination about what that little bit of data means. And again, the people just ignore it and are stuck in the survival level. And so much so that they don't even have the basic techniques to run their survival. It's totally dependent on people and possibly negative ways of being dependent. And I say that not just for individuals, but it's coming to me that also organizations and the entire nonsensical pyramid scheme of things. It's what happens is that people who can't deal abuse and subjugate and enslave and all the negative things that we perceive in our experience of life. So I'm working somewhere around the thought here of at some point there's learning, at some point there's knowledge, at some point there's avoidance and chosen ignorance. And all of these factors are running around the world that you and I are sharing. And those are some of the influences that we get to deal with, such as what's happening out in the cosmos with the incredible speeds of spinning and traveling and expanding and heating. And I can empathize with galaxies and planets as far as how do I make sense of all of this? Where am I going? What's my existence about? So, Dennis, I don't have a specific answer to how we make sense of things, because, well, maybe I do, and I've had my limits and my filters that help me do that, and I think we all do that to a certain extent, and then we find likenesses in attraction, whether it be magnetism or gravitation or whatever it is that has us say, I relate to that more than this. I'm attracted to that more than this. And I think that's what drives me and probably you as well in the search for knowledge and discussion. If not necessarily to come up with the answer, at least to be seeking, to be continuing the learning, to be continuing to be open to change rather than stasis and fixedness, which as we know, human beings tend to gravitate to because it's easier, right? I know I can live today like I did yesterday because in my world, everything stays the same. I think I'd mentioned a few weeks ago, and I still don't remember his name, but he was a union organizer who became a philosopher. It'll come to me at some point soon. But his quote was, in times of change, the learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will inherit a world that no longer exists. So I think that just always speaks to we have to look at things as they change. We have to be adaptable to that change, and we have to adapt our actions to the changes that we see occurring around us. And this especially makes sense in what we've been doing to the world, which is basically the crux of why we're here together anyway.